deficient in certain hormones, as the regulatory system breaks down, and we start getting symptoms. And the same thing in the Kabbalistic tree. You try to regulate it by either going to the right, which is centrifugal or outgoing, or to the left, which is receptive, and that to try to bring it back to center where the energy needs to go all the way down. Now, the Kabbalists said that the energy is so powerful and so strong and so capable of creating universes that everything that exists in our universe, in our existence, comes from a dot the size of maybe a pencil dot, much smaller than this, and that comes from the realm of what they called wisdom, which in their part would be consistent with emptiness or bliss. And everything would, so that would be the equivalent of our Big Bang, and that dot would go through a process of becoming even smaller till it has to explode in order to become bigger and producing a universe. So they have 3 dimensions in this whole process in the spiritual world. The Kabbalists always maintain that the best we can do is get a reflection from this realm, that we can't actually experience this directly. So the level of the descending light would have to go through a transformation, and by that transformation it would become into duality. And this is the second world, which would be the mental world, or the Bria. And at Bria is the level of nothingness, which is not the same as Ein Sof, and certainly not of Ayin. And Bria is something becoming out of nothing. And that's the mental world. So the way we've always taught it, at least since I've been taught it in the United States, was the energy would be so strong it'd be like plugging a lamp into the Hoover Dam. So you didn't have to have a transformer, and the mental world becomes the transformer. And in biblical Hebrew, the same word for thing and thought was exactly the same. They made no distinction. So how did a thought become manifest in a physical? That there would be certain geometries in motion, and then the combinations would create the blueprint for something to manifest physically. So as we go down the tree, so we're in the mental Bria, nothing emergent. That's also the world of observation. So when we talk about meditation, in order to quiet the mind when things become out of balance, is if to access this world, you can't use your analytical mind, you can't use your scientific mind, you need just your observation. So you don't see, in order to experience the true nature of phenomena, you have to be able to observe things without interpreting. And that's the realm of the mental world. And the center of that is Tiferet, which has traditionally been the level of splendor, but it's also the level of compassion. Okay?
So the Bria is the one with the 5 or something like that?
3. They all have 3 except for the lower level.
So which are the 3 of the mental world?
You would have Din, and then you would have Chesed. And Chesed has been translated as mercy or kindness.
Yeah.
And Din is the level of judgment, but it's also the level of distinction. So that's where the duality comes from. So Din would be, this is a shirt and this is a chair. That would be in the Din. So you're able to distinguish things so you can have function. Now, what Din overflows, according to Kabbalah, there's in the original diagram of creation, there's no good or evil, and that evil comes from an imbalance on these 2 spheres where there's too much judgment and too much rigidity, and that it overflows and forms what they call a Sitra Achra, which is an alternate universe. So it's not something inherent in the system. Which I found years ago when I was studying the tantras, the medicine Buddha tantras, also said in nature there was the solutions, and that it didn't seem to be, neither system seemed to think that there would be a species on this planet that would destroy its own solutions.
So Kriya is the, I don't know how to say this, Gevura, Hesed, and Tiferet?
Yeah, Gevura is, sometimes it depends on which text. The one I use is Din, but Gevura would be another way of doing it.
Because that's the one page you gave me with all the names, that's where I got.
Yeah, sometimes Gevura is used, but I found Din is more,
You would have that?
yeah. Well, it's not what I'd rather, it's maybe we have both on it. It depends on which Kabbalistic text you're reading.
Okay.
Gevura also means when you're able to distinguish something, you can overcome it, sort of like the medical system, by thinking that if you give something a name, you can cure it. It's a way of overcoming limitations. This is also the level of the brain, by the way, and this is the level of the heart. So this would be the right brain, and this would be the left brain. So this is outgoing, and this is ingoing. So when the energy descends, you go into the next world, which is the world of formation, the world of creation. And in that world, you already have something. So sometimes they say, like a carpenter would take wood and make it into a table or a chair. So something actually exists in that world. And as that world goes in, it's also the world of individuation. So here in the mental world, you distinguish things. But if you get stuck with that, you create aversions. And so something becomes, this is good and this is bad, this is safe, this is unsafe, this is holy, this is not holy. It's all distinction, but if you get locked in that and you lose your flexibility and you become rigid in your thinking and your mental world, you can't get into the next world, which is the world of individuation. And that world is the world of infinite possibilities. So this is the world of biochemistry on the physical basis. This is so this is where also the ideas come about. So at this level, you have an internal process of something wanting to manifest. It's called Netzach. I didn't write it down. And Netzach also means the Natzach, which means the victory. And this is the level where you want to accomplish something. So here you get the idea that the intention manifests in the dual thing, that I want to be a doctor, I want to be a father, I want to be a shoe salesman. And here you get, how do I become the shoe salesman or the doctor or the scientist? And how do I overcome the inherent limitations of manifesting anything? But it has to take form. So the formation happens in this level, which is Hod, which is the archetypical level. So it draws on a large library of different forms for things to take apart, and sort of like the Jungian archetype. And then over here is Yesod, is the foundation, which they considered the level of heaven. This is also the heaven of your blueprint. So you have an intention coming from up here of what you want your life to manifest. You have a question that motivates you, and then it manifests down here. You create a blueprint, so a plan, so to speak. And one of the great Kabbalists of the 14th century, Joseph G. Cotillia, he said that this blueprint, what happens, it's very precise, and then when you end up in the physical world, you get distracted. So even in the 14th century, we talk about us being them being distracted. You can imagine how we are. And what happens is that the distraction becomes your symptoms. And that the map back to the center of who you are is the symptoms. And if you suppress the symptoms, you lose the map. And if you read some of the older homeopathic texts that were written in Germany, they say the same thing. That Hahnemann, who's been credited being the father of homeopathy, who was fluent in Hebrew and 13 other languages, and probably applied Hegelian dialectics, and what he said that cure takes place by not suppressing symptoms, but allowing the symptoms to guide us until ultimate cure. And when there's no more symptoms, you're back to the center of who you are. And so homeopathy came about of stimulating the system to go into a healing process. So the whole design of the regulatory system is to bring you back to center so this can flow. So we talked about also when we came back to the physical world that one of the obvious things that anybody can observe what's the difference between the fourth world, which is the world of Asiyah, which is the world of doing, of accomplishments, and it's also the world of consciousness. And it's what is the difference between this one and all three others?
You're talking about physical?
Yeah.
It's the only one in that space.
Yeah, it's the only one that has one, and there's a physics law, and I hope I get it right, but the faster some energy moves, the heavier it becomes. And so this to become physical and hard, it has to be, it has to descend fast, and then it has to be manifesting into a physical in order for a very precise experience to take place. And in Kabbalah, they say there's always, nothing is preordained, that you have always 6 options, and that one of the 6 options will be the one that's most familiar to you, and that's the one you're likely to take, but it might not be the optimum option. It might be actually a bad option, and that the consciousness of you is your choice of which option you choose. So you have to have the discipline, the spiritual discipline, to see things for what they really are in order to make the optimum choice. And that the seventh day is the Sabbath, or the day of choice, which is consciousness. So that's basically basic Tree of Life Kabbalah. And many people say this, some of this information, what's the physicist from City College in New York? Yeah, so he said this is very consistent with string and multiverse theory, M-theory. So he maintains, because they're talking about the ultimate dimensions. Just to confuse everybody, that the tree takes place in each one of these spheres, and yet none of these spheres actually exist. They're just teaching tools, and that everything we experience is on this level, and the tree that we experience is within here. So when we think we're up in the spiritual world, we're still down in the physical. And it goes on forever. It's an unbroken chain. So when we're saying that we can experience the higher realms through reflections, it's the higher realms within here. So we're far away from the ultimate, So that's, any questions? That was a quick review.
A million questions, not right now.
Okay, so now we're gonna go back into healing. What was that?
Oh, I just said, why don't you ask them?
No, I just want to say a million questions because he asked.
I know, I mean, that's what drove me crazy my whole life. And that's what one of my major teachers said to me. When I first met him on Mount Zion, he said to me, you know, I was the last online, there was about 40 people there. And he said to me, he says, spend your life looking for the right questions, don't even bother looking for the answers. Okay, so I'm going to repeat myself. So when we look at the healing process, what happened to me in 1966 was I studied with the only left living master of Kabbalah, who was in his 90s. Now I understand that there's quite a few, but at that time, all the ones that were recognized